who was a staunch Republican partisan when he was rewarded with the judgeship in '92 by George H.W. Bush. More telling about his bias, however, is that Randa is the only federal district judge in Wisconsin who is a regular on the circuit of right-wing judicial junkets. Who pays for those junkets? The Koch brothers. This is Jim Hightower saying,
those Koch
to
brothers
keep
again.
up with this fast-spinning saga of
They're
Scott
everywhere.
Walker's campaign corruption, connect to the Center for Media and
Everywhere.
Democracy.
Where do you
They're
think
at
they got all that? I don't want to talk about it.
www.prwatch.org. prwatch.org.
To get more of Jim Hightower's populist take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to, visit www.hightowerlowdown.org.
Yeah. Come on. Yeah.
Good afternoon, I'm Warren Ellie, and welcome to Last Call on WMNF 88.5, your community radio station. Today, America's 238th birthday. July 4th is actually Friday, of course, but why wait? Here to talk about our country's birthday today is a man who is living the American dream, and he's celebrating his own birthday today. Entrepreneur, activist Joe Redner. Welcome back, Joe. Happy birthday.
Hey, thanks, Warren. Thanks. I really didn't want to hear about my birthday. Though. You get 73, 74, you start thinking, well, maybe those birthdays are
Oh, a lot of wisdom there in those years.
Yeah.
Though. One of the stories I read about this man, the story sent me to the dictionary, Joe. It was Lloyd Grove, who wrote a profile of you for the Daily Beast. This was just before the Republican convention came to Tampa. He called you an autodidact. And I said, what's he saying about Joe? Autodidact. Well, I looked it up, and it means self-taught, self-educated. And here's what Grove wrote. He said, Redner dropped out of high school and became wealthy from hard work, intelligence, and imagination. And Joe, you're in good company among your fellow autodidacts, Ernest Hemingway, Ray Bradbury, Frank Zappa, Russell Crowe, Frank Lloyd Wright, Elon Musk, he's the SpaceX guy, the Tesla guy, Abraham Lincoln, we've heard of him, and Benjamin Franklin.
Wow, nice company.
So having said all that, what about this American dream, Joe? Some say it's less obtainable than ever with this increasing shift in political and economic power to the few, the 1%. Is the dream still there?
The rich. I don't think so, because the big corporations, the special interests, are just brainwashing the people to get them to think that them making all that money and nobody else making any is just great. And I know people that have no money, have no chance of getting anywhere, yet they think austerity is great, and the less you tax, the better off they're going to be. And if you just take a look at Kansas, and you'll see that is the stupidest thing that anybody ever said. They're going down the tubes because they lowered taxes thinking they would have an economic boom if people didn't have to pay taxes. Of course, the rich got all the tax cuts, and they're not going to spend any more money. They already spend it.
813-239-9663 if you'd like to talk to Joe Redner about America's 238th birthday. Joe, Thomas Jefferson talked about all these self-evident truths that were, unalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, did you know that the Declaration of Independence actually was voted on? The independence from Britain was actually voted on the 2nd, not on the 4th.
It was voted on today.
Yes.
238 years ago.
Yeah.
Very
It's funny.
interesting.
Yeah.
Does anybody read that stuff anymore? Does anybody take that to heart?
Even I don't. I'm coming on your program, but I Wikipedia'd it. So I read.
That's all right,
It's
though.
hard to remember. For me, it's hard to remember all that stuff. I can remember, yes, they crossed the Delaware. I don't remember what they, because the date really, to my mind, is not important. It's that they did it and what resulted from it.
Yeah, and I guess we've had periods in our history where we've had this out of whack wealth situation.
Yeah, back when we went into the Depression, back in what, the 20s and early 30s?
And when Roosevelt began the great experiment with Social Security and giving working people,
Right.
and about the same time as he did that, the Chamber of Commerce, led by the man Justice Stevens, remember, became the Supreme Court Justice, wrote this great manifesto for the Chamber of Commerce that business needs to get involved in politics. We can't have these working people having rights and benefits, and Ronald Reagan handed Stevens' manifest to every member of his administration on inauguration.
Did not know that.
Yes, he did. Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see, we have Robert in St. Pete. Let's dive right in.
You know, there's one thing
What's
about
that,
it on your, we're talking to the choir because the people that
Yeah,
listen
we are.
to 88.5, and I like, you know what I like to do? I like to argue with people. I like to point out, you know, what kind of logic they're using. And I come here and everybody, it's a love fest. Everybody.
Well, you never know. There might be some out there, Joe. You're calling them out.
Yeah.
We'll see what we got. The phones are lighting up. I just wanted to hit one more thing before we go to Robert, and this'll kind of set a little tone for where we're going. So hang in there, folks, just another minute. Of course, it's not, and I know, you know, Joe didn't want me to keep saying it, so I'm not going to say it's Joe's birthday, but it's also the birthday of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, signed on this day 50 years ago by LBJ. President Kennedy had pledged a sweeping attack on racial discrimination. His assassination left Johnson, a Southern Democrat, with a pretty darn tough choice, and he made that choice 5 days after John Kennedy died in an address to Congress.
And now we have someone a business in South Carolina saying they will not serve blacks because it is their religious right not to serve them.
That was in 1968.
We're reverting in our Supreme Court,
Yeah.
the 5 justices, the male justices on the Supreme
Right.
Court. They care about nobody.
Right.
They could give a damn about the poor. They could give a damn about even the middle class. They don't care about anybody but themselves. Look at Scalia and Thomas going out to the Cooch brothers and all that stuff. That's just insanity.
Insanity. Yeah. Well, there was a piece on the internet today about a man who didn't want to serve blacks at his restaurant in South Carolina, and it was actually just a thought provoker. The guy who wrote that happened in 1968. Went through the Supreme Court of Carolina and the United States Supreme Court, and he, of course, was not allowed
to do that.
But what's interesting is that Hobby Lobby used the same arguments
Oh yeah.
that he was using to to say he doesn't have to serve blacks. They used the same argument to deny women contraceptive devices on their insurance. And that same logic in that United States Supreme Court case. Well, anyway, here's what Johnson said about ending discrimination in America.
Oration or eulogy could more eloquently honor President Kennedy's memory than the earliest possible passage of the Civil Rights Bill for which he fought so long.
Now, desegregation may be the law of the land, but it's clear to many that there remain two Americas, increasingly divided not only on racial and ethnic lines, but economic lines as well. And then there are those all these years later who chip away at the act, questioning its reach, its constitutionality. Listen here to Senator Rand Paul, who thinks it ought to be, even though he says this isn't something he would do personally, but Rand Paul believes that it ought to be a business's right to turn folks away.
Different titles, you know, to the Civil Rights Act, and 9 out of 10 deal with public institutions, and I'm absolutely in favor of. One deals with private institutions, and had I been around, I would have tried to modify that. But you know, the other thing about legislation, this is why it's a little hard to say exactly where you are sometimes, is that when you support 9 out of 10 things in a good piece of legislation, do you vote for it or against it? And I think sometimes those are difficult situations. What I was asked by the Courier-Journal, and I stick by it, is that I do defend and believe that the government should not be involved with institutional racism or discrimination or segregation.
But it's okay for anybody
busing,
else.
all of those things.
So
But had I
is this
been there,
Mark?
there would have been some discussion over one of the titles
this
of the
Mark?
civil rights.
Is
And
this Mark?
I think that's a valid point,
Mark,
still a valid
honey.
discussion, because
Mark,
the thing
honey,
is
can
if
you
we
hang on
want to
2 seconds?
harbor in on
Let-
private businesses and their policies, then you have to have the discussion about, do you want to
Hang on.
abridge the
The First Amendment as well, and that was on Rachel
So-
Maddow.
He says the First
On
Amendment
MSNBC.
gives people the right to discriminate against blacks. That's what he's saying.
That's what in essence he says, and he in later remarks, Paul said, quote, "I have been concerned about the ramifications of certain portions of the Civil Rights Act beyond race, as they are now being applied to smoking, menus, listing calories, and things on menus," and of course he adds, guns.
Didn't work. They tried it in New York, the courts
Right.
overruled it. They made the same decision.
But it's interesting how he's carving out that arena, Joe. After all these years, after 50 years, we are still debating.
He's playing, well, actually, that was a black audience he was talking to, wasn't it?
It was at Howard University, was it, in
Yeah.
Washington DC, I believe.
Yeah, I think.
Yes, and that is a black university.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a couple of calls. We got folks out there want to talk to Joe Redner. I can't blame them. Robert, you're in St. Petersburg and you're on with Joe Redner. Thanks for calling. Hello, Robert. Are you there, Robert? 1, 2. Not there. Sammy in St. Petersburg. How are you, sir?
Uh-huh.
Hello, are you there? Okay, go ahead. You mean desegregate?
Oh,
Right, that's desegregation,
Are
right?
you calling to be on the show? What's your first name and where you calling from?
so why should you have to know what's going on? So why didn't you ask him when you found out everything should be all right? Why are you on the radio complaining? Oh, okay. Oh, you're over it. You're not, so you didn't like them busing those black people into your neighborhood, huh? You didn't, why did you answer me? You like it or you don't like it? Yeah. He's not gonna answer the question.
Jim, do you have a question?
No, he's got his
Okay.
alter ego.
All right, Joe. Well, thank you, Jim in Gulfport, for calling. Let's try the next one. No? Nobody there? Okay. Mark. Hey, Mark.
Whoa.
What was that? Oh, you're not ready, Mark?
You get it? Yeah. Hey, thank you so much. But how'd you get in free? Oh, no, I never bought a boat in my life. Are you kidding me? I wouldn't do that. That's what other people do. I don't do that.
I know, right?
No. Where was that? I don't believe that. I don't know. I just know that, I don't know if someone else that works for me would do that, but that's not something that I would do. I just would not do that. All right.
Thanks for calling, Mark.
No, I only have one now. It's the Mons Venus. Yeah, you can. If you got $20, you can.
See you later, Borg.
I'm not running now.
All right, let's try. You're killing me, Joe. All right, Guy in Tampa, you're on the air with Joe Redner.
I'm doing great. How are you? Well, what they believe really ain't got it doesn't have anything to do with religion. It's got to do with oppression. It's got to do with their cultural beliefs that they cannot get over. That you can't logic somebody, or you can't reason somebody out of a cultural belief that they weren't reasoned into. It's almost impossible. Right. Right. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind a one world order if it was the right one. If it's one that really practiced equal rights and and took care of its people. I could care less who's in the government or what government I'm under, as long as I'm free. I was taught from the time I can remember that this is a free country. The essence of freedom is I can do as I want unless I hurt somebody else, and I'm obligated to help my fellow human being, especially when they're hurting and they're down. And these people on the Supreme Court, they don't give a good goddamn about anybody but themselves.
Thanks for calling, Guy. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.